Hey, guess what, everybody? Go listen to the Break It Down show.
So on today's Break It Down show, George Whitney is here, and George has volunteered to break down the Break It Down show.
It's actually his idea. It was a great idea.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea, George. So what do you want to talk about?
What I wanted to talk about is that I understand that today is something to celebrate.
What's that?
I got up this morning, I looked on the computer, and you guys published your 40th podcast.
Our 40th podcast.
It seems like just yesterday you started doing that.
It was about 6 months ago.
What I will say to that is, holy shit, 40
Yeah,
of
40.
Let's start with congratulations.
Oh, thanks, man.
Cheers, indeed.
Yeah.
A lot of nice work. So
Fire away, George.
So at this point, I thought it would be a great opportunity to take a look back at the 40 episodes, understand what you guys were thinking when you first started, what you guys have learned along the way, some of the highs and lows and a lot of in-betweens, and let's talk about that a little bit. Fair enough?
Yeah.
It sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with Break It Down. Where did that name come from? Are you making fun of Pete's mechanical ability, or are you guys intending to scratch the surface? Where did that name come from?
It's a throwback to when "ha ha ha ha" was a lyric. Break it down.
Yeah.
Rock.
Nobody's taking credit for that.
I'm going to give you credit for the idea, but it was a thing. We were kicking around ideas. This is how I remember it.
Yeah.
Tell me if you got something different. You said, what about Break It Down show? And I'm pretty easy to please, you know. I just want to pick something, you know. And I thought, well, yeah, I like that. Let's try it. And he was going to go and check and see if it was available.
So this was born.
Evidently, it was available.
Yeah,
We had to put show at the end, though.
Yeah. Break it down show.
a small sacrifice.
And the funny thing is, the other Break It Down show, the other show known as Break It Down, belongs to National Geographic or something. And we don't know what it is, and I've never seen episodes of it, although I'm a big fan of National Geographic. But I also came to find out later, and it's not that I came to find out, I was reminded. I'm a fan of an artist named Baby Bash because we were friends growing up, and he has a song called Break It Down.
He does.
That he does with Too Short and Clive Carson, and it's not my favorite of his songs. So I wasn't honestly thinking about it, although, you know, if he comes on the show, I'll probably throw something in there just to let him know that, hey, man, we weren't shamelessly plagiarizing you. Not that I'm above it. I'm not above it. But we just happen not to be.
So this idea was born was this the classic on the back of a napkin type of thing? Or where were you guys? What were you guys talking about?
We were sitting in a truck, probably getting ready to move a sofa somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And we're just tossing back ideas back and forth. And I don't remember that I came up with it, although I remember that it was my task to go see if it was available.
I think it wasn't so much like your Genesis moment. It was like in a series of things that we'd kick back, you know, like Pooh Bear and the Boys. No. And then like you probably said.
Although I think that's a great title for a podcast.
Pooh Bear and the Boys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Smokey and the Band.
We'll all get like size extra small red shirts, you know.
All right. Got weird.
That sounds great. Yeah.
I appreciate that you're having us look back at 40 episodes, though, because 40 episodes is a lot.
That's a body of work.
You need to. It's a chunk. It's a chunk of work. And these things are not easy to put together. You guys are finding some awesome people with some great stories, folks that many of us would, you know, we struggle to remember. But, you know, a lot of people are listening to those folks now. They've got their own sort of separate followings. But you're finding folks that were like mainstream and people that we want to know about because we defined our lives with a lot of that stuff that you guys are bringing back and reminding us with.
I don't think we intended that specifically. I think we're just old. And the thing is that we're not just seeking out artists who have had some sort of hit in a time that has passed and what are they, it's not a where are they now show, although it sort of has elements of that because we are curious about things like that. But most of the artists or writers or anybody that we're talking with now, it's more a, wow, I didn't know you were still than a where are they now.
Yeah, for sure. We didn't want it to be a where are they now show specifically. Like that was a thing. We'll do that show, but we didn't want it to be that.
But help us out here. How do you guys figure out how to put counterinsurgency operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, the origins of hip-hop and rap in the Bay Area in the 90s and even in the mid 80s and later, right? And Killiquin. How do you fit that all in a show?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Well, the thing is, it's a two-man show with guests. And that's really what it comes down to. Because Pete and I, as much as we are similar in that we like beer,
I like beer.
titties.
Oh, I like titties.
Yeah, things like that. We are also very different in that he has a totally different life experience than I do. And so we come at things with a whole different bunch of information. So I'll admit, when we do a show that's on military strategy or with somebody who has written a book based on their experience in the war, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about that stuff. So I go into it sort of as the layperson, where Pete has a detailed knowledge of those things and really kind of owns that show. And I just come in and go, well, here I am, like the casual listener / registered voter. And here's what I think of things, because I clearly have a point of view that is far less informed. Let's help inform the folks who are like me.
Yeah. And it's been like that.
The Giants must just have scored.
Yeah, it's been clapping.
You were saying, George?
It's been like that for us listeners. I mean, going to your webpage, it's like a grab bag. 1 minute you're listening to somebody who was writing and performing music that you listened to when you took your first date to high school. And the next 3 days later, you're listening to a retired 3-star general that's talking about things we could have done better over in the Middle East.
When we started with a radio show, we should say that. And it was a local station called OzCat, and it was community radio, and we were enjoying the heck out of doing that. But we always kind of knew we both knew we needed more. And that's where the podcast was born. John, I think, got the fever a little earlier than I did, because it's easy for the both of us to put something off and not get it done. As busy as we stay, that kind of thing. So he got the ball rolling on that, and he was really into the podcast thing and got me thinking about it. And we started listening to comedy and thought about comedians and all these other things. But the show always was going to be a mosaic. We've always said that. And the thing about a mosaic that's beautiful is that the ugliest individual single tile might be everybody's favorite tile. You just don't know. And instead of trying to neck down life, we're trying to make a menagerie of stories where you can start to interconnect. And this happens to us all the time. We'll have guests that come on and they say something, and they are a military strategist, and it absolutely rings true with what someone who's a musician says. Happens all the time.
They do tend to have common threads that we can easily identify and that make themselves evident.
And if you look at it in terms of a mosaic, it's like, you're a blue tile and you're a red tile. But damn, if you guys don't go together on this same puzzle.
Yeah, and it does seem like there is, I don't know, to keep using the metaphor, like this thread does continue. You guys, you don't build the program one show at a time. You're knitting a sweater. And it grows, and it takes shape every single episode that you guys do.
I'm really glad that you can identify with that, George, and I hope that other people do, because there are episodes that belong to both of us, but not usually. Usually an episode either belongs to Pete or it belongs to me. And when that's the case, the other becomes not necessarily the comic foil, but definitely the co-pilot. I mean, when we interviewed General Dan Bolger or Fred Leland.
Right.
On either one of those, I'm the co-pilot, and I will chime in ways that I think will bring the conversation to back to the layperson, because what we're both guilty of when it's my show, or Pete when it's his show, is going into the granular.
Oh, it's easy.
Yeah, because I could talk to Drez about gear in the studio. The thing is, the difference between Pete and me is I've been a musician, I've been a filmmaker, and Pete has been places in the world and interacted with cultures in the world that I can't really relate to on that same level. So one of us has to take the lead on each show.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it's kind of neat to have the ability to do both. Because if I had to host a show by myself, there would be a certain kind of guest, there would be a certain line of questioning, there would be a particular path that stuff went down, and then it'd only be a matter of time before it would spiral out of control into film nerddom or recording studio nerddom or just something where every once in a while I need to have Pete go, yeah, man, but listen, what about the rest of us out here on the dance floor?
The thing about being the host, he does kind of drive the emceeing part of the show, which is cool because that allows me to sit back and reflect as he goes along and change pace and take the weight off of him, because otherwise you're MC, you're the question guy, and you're trying to hold a conversation. That's a lot of roles for one person to do. So if I was to do the show by myself, the same thing, I find like, man, it's a lot of work. You run your own podcast. You know what that feels like, where you're trying to set tempo. You're trying to find.
But I don't have to be entertaining.
Well, yes, but you understand the weight, though, of trying to set a pace for a show. And if you're banging around trying to find, because oftentimes we'll try to figure out where the guest's happy spot is. And we're trying to draw them off their paper. Like always, like we have an idea of what we might talk about.
Yeah.
But because we have trust between each other, we don't have to talk about that thing.
We usually don't.
No, we usually don't.
Yeah, I've seen you guys in action. It's rolling.
Yeah, I have to talk it out front and think about what might occur so I can be calm and prepared. John doesn't have to do that, I don't think. But he indulges me when I'm like, all right, what are we going to talk about? And knowing full well, both of us know that we're not going to talk about that, but that's just part of my process that I have to do.
Yeah, Pete has to have a plan so he knows what to deviate from.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
So I thought, it'd be great.
We need to clue our listeners into the fact that you're being sarcastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right.
I like planning.
Yeah.
All right.
George has a notebook next to him right now.
Uh-huh.
Ready to go.
It's my job.
But he hasn't opened it.
No, it's closed.
We're all off script.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys people have been listening to you now for 40 episodes for a long time.
That's
you
crazy.
guys have interviewed a lot of folks,
Yeah.
talked about a lot of different things. I don't know that everybody out there listening knows you guys. So I thought I'd spend a couple minutes with you and see if we could draw out a little bit of you to share with the audience. And
Holy shit.
I want to start with John, because John said something that I just got to push back on.
Oh, God.
I think you said, well, I'm kind of one-dimensional. And if there's one way to describe you, I don't think one-dimensional is that way. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're big in the martial arts scene. You're into music. Certainly talk a lot about island lifestyle. You got a lot of history across the ocean or in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Big into sports.
Yeah.
Big into music.
Yeah.
Where do you find time for all this stuff?
Yeah, I guess I've done a few things, but all of those things really feed into my one dimension, which is I just really like to enjoy myself, perhaps to a fault. And all of that stuff I find fun, but, there's a level of seriousness that I tend to lack. And if that's my one dimension, that's what it is. Yeah.
If you ever not want to complete a wine walk, go with John.
Yeah.
You are not going to get anywhere near where you're supposed to go. But you're going to talk to
What is a
him.
wine walk?
I don't know.
Like when you pay $5 and you start at the bottom of First Street and you go into every little BS shop that they got down there selling crap I never need. That's a wine walk in Benicia. And if
He's talking about the wine walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't been.
Let's explain that to our listeners, because that's a neat thing that belongs to our town here.
Yeah.
We have a couple times a year what's known as a wine walk. We're in Bayview Studios in lovely Benicia, California. And the thing about Benicia is it really is lovely. And it's a quaint little Mayberry town. But we are sort of, we're 20 minutes really from Napa. So there's a lot of winos here. So we have what we call the wine walk a couple times a year. And that is all the boutique shops on First Street, which are, as you would imagine them, listeners. I'm talking to our listener in Uzbekistan. And we have one listener in Uzbekistan.
We got one in Germany, too. Hey,
one.
Megan.
Hey, Megan.
What's up?
What's going on? The wine walk involves getting a nice day and a glass and going from shop to shop. We're talking about antique mom and pop shops and things like that. And when you go in there, they say, oh, we're an antique shop. We sell trinkets from, whatever. Let me pour you some wine and have some of these cookies. That's my wife, Gloria. She made them. And you just go from shop to shop and you do this. And it's pretty cool. So that's what Pete and I like to do, because we're dudes. We go on this quaint little wine walk. We're always pulled in by the ladies, but it's
Yeah.
it's a decent excuse to get sauced and walk up the street.
And you guys can talk story in an antique shop.
Yeah, but you don't even necessarily go into the shop because John will get stopped by somebody and he has no problem talking to them. So it's kind of like a little mini show all the time. You know,
Yeah.
I'll crack a couple of jokes and he'll run the stories and I'll inject something, and it is like a mobile show.
All right, so John's going to go down in this podcast as saying his biggest fault is that he doesn't take things too seriously. If I had that kind of vice, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
I could live with that.
But I do have laser focus, absolutely intense, uninterruptible laser focus. Typically when titties are out.
Oh, titties?
Yeah. See?
Damn it. I missed them again.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's ask Pete some questions.
Yeah, let's ask Pete some questions because I wasn't expecting anything more serious from Pete. I've known Pete longer. Pete, I think we go back to
I don't remember a time when I didn't know the Whitneys. I'll tell you that.
at least to the mid 1980s, right?
Or earlier. Yeah. Way back.
All right.
Brian and I went to middle school together. That started in 80.
Okay. Yeah, so way back.
And then any sports before that. And I
That's
know
around
about
the time when Christ was a mess cook.
So,
Yeah.
So it's hard to paint a picture, but Pete may have been the first guy that I mean, Pete was. We always saw him as sort of crazy.
Is this a story about sexual experimentation?
No,
Pete
I
may
keep
have
it
been
clean.
the first guy.
No, in the 1980s, you know, when we all
You
had
know,
those
when the cocaine was flowing
those-
and everybody was a lot more free. Shirts were looser.
John, you know what I'm talking about. When we had those senior pictures and you had to wear those blue tuxes with the ruffles in them. That's how
Right.
That's how long
the
ago we're
ruffles
talking.
that were 4 feet wide that went from nipple to nipple, but there
Right.
were just 5 of them.
Right. And Pete may be the guy who shook it all up by wearing. I think weren't you one of the first guys to ever wear Converse to a prom or something?
I did. I wore blue suede Vision streetwear. No, I wore red Converse. You're right. I wore blue suede high top Vision streetwear to my wedding.
Yeah. So we never held out a lot of hope that Pete was going to be like holding down the end of Sirius, right? He's always been kind of on the edge a little bit.
Yeah.
But then he went in the Army and he got inspired by this 9/11 event, and then he disappeared from local life here for a lot of years. You
Yeah,
spent,
long
I think,
time.
I think you spent more time in Iraq and Afghanistan than anybody I know.
That's easily true. Yeah, that's easily true. I've got years there.
Yeah.
And the folks that have spent a lot of time there don't have the combat missions that I have. So if they've been there for as many years, they don't have. No one is within 100 times outside of the fence than me. Not even 100.
So I don't know if you were in the room when I first heard this, but I think it was maybe late 90s. You know, I asked, "Where's Pete? What's Pete doing?" And somebody said, "Well, he's basically doing PSYOPs, psychological warfare operations in the Army." And I said, "You know what? That'd be a perfect job for him because, you know, to quote another old timer, maybe even older than us, Mr. T, I really pitied the fool that would get in front of Pete when he's determined to mess up the bad guy." And that's what you got a chance to do over there was understand and help people thwart bad guys, right?
Yeah, what I didn't do psyops, oddly enough, but yes, I did a lot of psyops type stuff.
Well, that was like your MOS before, right?
Counterintelligence.
Okay.
So, but they're very similar. You know, I mean, I'm still in there playing with emotions. I'm still in there pushing buttons, and I can tell you a quick story about that. Right when I was first going to get back into it and go to Iraq, I lived in Chicago and I was getting ready to leave, and I'd come back. Actually, I'd moved away and I came back just to hang out before I left. And they're like, "Well, what do you do?" Because they didn't know me as a spy. They knew me as Pete, the guy that sold computers and was a goofball. And like, "What do you do? I'm like, I push buttons. I find buttons that work, and that makes the person open up and tell me things. And it's the same stuff we do here. I'm not spying on anybody, but it's the same skill set where you try to find a person's vulnerabilities and make it okay so that they're willing to give that to us. And that happens for John and us all the time. But my friend said, "Well, you can't just do that." And I'm like, "Well, if you know it's coming, it's very hard to do. But here's what I'll do. We're going to go out drinking. And by the end of the night," is my friend Jeff Boskin, I said, "By the end of the night, you're going to stand up, point at me, and say, 'I fucking hate you. I'm going to punch you in your face. I'm going to point at you and say, 'Ha ha, I told you I was just pushing your buttons.' And then you're going to be like, yeah, that's probably true, but fuck you, I'm still going to punch you in the face. And the thing is, he swore he had no buttons. I don't have any buttons. And I look at Dennis, my buddy, Dennis Rohn, and I'm like, he's got buttons. Let me just tell you, this guy's Catholic and Jewish. So he's got guilt like crazy, you know?
That's like a scientific calculator.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to know anything to know that I can make that guy feel guilty and that I can play his Jewish nature, which isn't a bad thing. It's just what he is. Just deny him or give him his Jewish nature, and he's going to respond. Whichever way he responds, I'll do the opposite.
Plus, he loves his mother, but she drives him bananas.
Right, exactly. He's always nervous about getting fired. All these things that I can use. So by the end of the night, he wants to punch me in the face. I look at Dennis and I go, look, hey, watch this. Boskin, I'm just pushing your buttons. I don't mean any of this stuff. And he's like, oh, damn it, I hate you, but I still want to punch you in the face. And so that's really ultimately what I did. You want different outcomes, obviously, for different times. But if you need to get a person angry, there's ways to do it. So I did a lot of that stuff, and I would evoke emotions and try to push people around. And that ultimately led to my ability to work within cultures, because you're talking about emotions. And if you can make emotions happen and you kind of control it, you can see what the true nature of the person is, because no one's going to tell you what they really believe right away.
And that's what I think what's one of the nice things that I hear when you bring these certain guests, military guests on the show, is that people get a chance to hear that warfare is no longer about, taking 6, 8, 12 weeks and dropping a lot of armor and driving tanks around until things blow up. There's a lot more to it than just firing weapons.
Will you please make that story have titties in it next time?
I will. And then we saw
It's a story
titties.
that starts off in a bar and there's no titties.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to laugh if he was going to finish the story by saying, hey, I won. I got this guy. He punched me in the face.
No, he didn't punch me in the face. But, the things like tonight, they have a riot going on in Baltimore where people are throwing bricks. That same environment exists all over the world. And unless you can go in and identify with the different parties involved, doesn't matter how dangerous it is, there's still people there that care about things. So if you bring in a bunch of armor, have you made the problem better or worse? So you can't create a resolution with violent action most of the time. And the military only has that lever. So I was able to help them quite a bit by saying, slow down, ease up. You're not killing anybody anymore. We're trying to give these people a government and stability, so you have to create stability. That's really the ultimate of what I was able to do when I was successful. And the stability provided is fleeting. It's very short, and it goes away the second you leave. So that's what I spent my last 10 years doing.
Well, I appreciate you guys sharing, because I thought this is important to bring out, because you guys are kind of enigmatic. Jon over here, I can watch him. He's getting uncomfortable at the seriousness of this conversation in just the last 3 or 4 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But, this guy that's serious about a lot of things just can't wait to have fun on the mic. And, this guy who's Pete, that's always, we always had him figured as a joker, is out there doing some very, very serious things. And you guys managed to bring that all together, find some very unique guests, and talk about that stuff.
That's true. That you are absolutely right, George. I am sitting over here and it's uncomfortable, and he does this all the time. I mean, we get off into a subject that is really, really serious. And when you listen to the show as a body of work, some of our best notes are when we really dig deep into some of these guests and the things that they have to say that are of some consequence. And every single time that we get there, because our listeners can't see what's going on, I guarantee that Pete's leaning into the mic and he's really drawing it out, or he's clearing the space for the guests to do what they're doing. And I'm sitting next to him looking off the other direction, sort of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's just the dynamic. That's how
crazy.
It works. I mean, each one of us has a role in this show that we've gotten really, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but I'll just use it because that's what it is.
It's familiar for sure.
It is familiar, yeah. That's
So
what it is.
I know Pete goes and drives cars real fast. He races to blow off steam. Jon, what do you do?
I was born on an island, man. I don't want to go that
He didn't have steam.
No,
I don't
no
have any
steam at all?
I don't have any steam. Honestly, and as a martial arts practitioner, I love the balance of it and all of that stuff. But I'm just not that violent a guy. You know what I like to do? I like to drink margaritas. I like to just have a good time. I'm all about the good time, and I'm about the mellow good time. As soon as the good time gets strenuous, I'm like,
All right.
Don't get me wrong, though. I'll kill a motherfucker.
No, I was about to say, yeah, let's not play around. There was a time when a mutual friend of all of ours was a little bit sauced and a little bit out of hand, and it wasn't really a problem with John. John would deal with it, but once KB, his wife, said he's got to go, John said, you got to go, and the guy didn't like that, so John locked him up and said, seriously, now that I got my arms around your neck, you understand it's time to go.
But he knows when to stand back too, because I've stood next to John at a bar,
yeah,
while you and a 20-something young man got back in each other's faces, and
let's be honest, that guy got nobody's face. He sat down and was afraid.
He was John and I were just sitting back enjoying the show.
We were enjoying the show. That was a lot of fun because that guy was going to get killed
by a couple different ways.
Couple different ways.
He never would have made it to me.
He never would have. That's true.
I was going to crush him.
You know, the thing is, we were enjoying the show, George, but I'm going to remind you of something. I don't know if you realize this, but I had an empty pint glass in my hand. And if he had gotten wise, he would have got that upside his head. And he was getting mouthy while sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
We would have stomped that guy into oblivion.
Yeah, it wasn't very strategic.
And
look, John and I don't want to fight anybody.
Yeah, that's never the MO. But this guy was getting mouthy, and Pete and I were like, "Look, we're the perfect wedge. We will just smash this guy into the corner of the room."
But I do think Pete misses pushing buttons. I do think he misses that.
I try not to. I honestly, sometimes I realize I'm doing it, and I'm like, "What am I doing?" And then I remind myself, and I stop doing it.
I think you're right.
I remember
not because you're a button pusher by nature, Pete, because we've had so many good times in it and so many mellow good times. But how can you be in that environment and learn to master that environment for the number of years that you have, and not every once in a while just revisit it just for fun?
Yeah, I don't think you can take the hunter out of the hunt.
Yeah,
I don't think that happens.
That perfectly said.
Yeah, and that guy's a great example of that because he was running his mouth. And so, he
had it coming, really.
Yeah, I'm already standing up. And then he got out of his chair, and I said, "Oh."
But then again, Pete, I remember being down on First Street.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of that bar because I don't go there all that often. We walked outside, and it was fun. It was a stupid little bar policy thing. I walked out at 7:59 with a baseball cap on.
Right.
And I tried to walk back in at 8:02 after taking a phone call, and they said, "Oh, sorry, we can't let you in. We don't allow people with hats."
Yeah.
You said I had been in there for an hour and I walked out to take a phone call.
My drink was on the bar.
Yeah.
Pete wasn't having any of it. Wouldn't let me talk at all. Yeah. He stepped in. He was handling it.
He owned the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's well established. Pete still pushes buttons.
Yeah.
And I don't fault him for it.
Sure.
It
makes for good podcasts.
If you like the show,
and you know you do,
send us some pictures of your movies.
Don't do that. Support the show.
There are 3 ways you can support us.
Number 1, go to iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And leave a 5-star rating and review.
It helps with the show metrics and helps us get better placement. Number 2,
visit our website,
www.breakitdownshow.com.
We've got an Amazon and an eBay link.
Same Amazon, same eBay, you know and love, but they give us a little kickback when you get to their site from ours. And number 3, leave comments about the shows that you like. We want to know what you think, how you feel.
Tell us how to make the show better. We greatly appreciate it.
Now back to the show.
We like boobies.
I want to know, John, what buttons does he push of yours when you guys are doing the show? What's a little? Give us a little behind the black curtain.
You know what? Pete pushes buttons sometimes, but not really during the show. I mean, during the show we have a shtick, and it's a shtick that we've gotten. Not only is it familiar, but it's sort of gotten good to us. I know when I'm coming off the rails. And then, and it's time to let Pete take over, and I think he does the same for me. And we have that rhythm down where my wife is a Giants fan, and so when things happen, she's off in the distance watching the Giants game. When things happen, she's reacting.
So what's happening between you two when the show really sings? What is it that really sort of gets you guys excited about the guest, the question, the response?
I'm going to jump in on you here.
Yeah.
It's when the guest is going like one of the best examples is when our musical guests start to sing. They open up their soul and they start singing. John and I both know this is the Vince Scully school of broadcasting. We just shut up,
Get out of the way.
get out of the way, let them do what they do, and if they need anything, you just poke them. You're like, wow, that was great.
You mean when Princeton trained Professor Greenberg talks about what sonata gets him lucky?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let those guys go. Let them reveal themselves.
He was a great guest.
Yeah, you don't
I
need to
love
get in the way
listening
of
to
them.
him.
Oh, man.
We sat down weekend before last with Dwayne Wiggins, who we've had on a couple of times, and either guesting or as a main host or as a main guest, and Tara Kemp, and they started singing. And I guarantee you, John and I just got out of the way.
didn't know that.
I might have beatboxed.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the result of our combined button pushing as we make it a comfortable space. And not to take advantage of the guests, but allow the guests to really be themselves, to really show themselves off. And those are the times that are really special for us. And sometimes we miss it because we're so in the moment, we don't realize. But then we'll screen the show and we're like, oh my goodness, this is really good.
Here's where Pete pushes my fucking buttons, man. When we're leading up to a show and he's all worked up about, what are we going to talk? What are we going to talk with Robert Greenberg about? And there is some degree of worry about, he's got a thing that he does that he probably wants to promote, and we want to be good partners in that promotion. And he's got a, thing that he does that he wants to discuss, and we want to be able to provide informed banter. But ultimately, what we end up doing is we talk about all that stuff, and Pete's got to, and he's got to be informed about it. But then what happens when we get the guest on, if we get it right, which we've been so fortunate in the guests that we've picked and who have picked us, that we've gotten it right practically every time.
Yeah.
And getting it right for us is when we just get to start them off, and then it's a conversation, and they start talking about their process, and then we both try to get out of the way. But we also both know when, they're not necessarily as comfortable with one of us than the other. So the other one will go in and poke and push in the, like Pete will go push him in my direction. And then I'll chime in with something like, well, what was that all about and why? And they'll be comfortable with me, or vice versa. I'll poke and they'll go towards Pete, and Pete will make them all comfortable and lull them into a sense of openness. And that's what happens when we really think that we have something good, is that you got to ask Dr. Greenberg about his education. You got to ask him about his favorite sonatas. You got to ask him about all the things that he's talked about in his vast body of work. But when he starts talking about how he was a smug music student at Princeton, how dare his younger brother call him to go check out this band at a high school prom? And then it's Bruce Springsteen,
Yeah.
And that's really what we're after, is tell us about the stuff that you would tell us about if you were a little drunk.
Yeah, the humanity of it.
Yeah.
He's like all of us, fascinated by Miley Cyrus's tongue. That was one of his things.
Yeah, and he came right out with that. It was clearly on his mind.
But you have to make them comfortable and make that it's okay to say that, because we're not gonna use that to his disadvantage. We're going to show him as the person that he is, and we've done that with a lot of guests. I'm thinking of Kabir Singh right now. We've had on several comics now, but he came at it from a very dark perspective where he's struggling to try to get to where he's going, and he's not getting there within his mental timeline. And so he talks about this, and this isn't something you ever consider when you see a comic, especially when it's as good as Kabir Singh. He kept there killing, and this guy he's on the road. He's everybody has to work. We've learned that over and over again. Everybody has to work hard, and he's working hard, and he revealed that to us, and it's beautiful. It's humanity. It's fantastic.
And you guys have a way of really making it look easy. But I wanted to ask, it
is easy. It is easy.
You guys just make it look easy.
No, it is easy. It is easy because we've managed to put ourselves in a position where we can do what we naturally do, and that we've picked guests who, again, I will always say, we pick our guests, but they pick us back.
All right. So,
And we've been fortunate enough to have people pick us back who they know what they're getting into. They're getting into getting double teamed in an interview show, which is never something that, in a textbook thing, if you think that you might be in an adversarial relationship in this interview, you should never have two people. But clearly our show is not that.
No.
So people say, yeah, okay. And when they join us, we kind of just love them up from two different directions.
Yeah.
so what makes a good guest?
That they've done or do something fascinating,
Yeah.
and that they have a reason to do their something fascinating that's also compelling.
If they're passionate and they're following their passion, that helps a lot.
Today's show, the one that we dropped today, number 40, Drez Titus from Black
Boy.
Sheep.
Yeah.
I am a fan of his. Before, I'm fortunate enough to have a relationship with him. I know him. He's my friend. He married into a family that I've known since I was a little kid. I mean, I grew up in their house almost as much as I grew up in my own. And now I have access to this person who I was fascinated with before I had access to him, because I listened to his stuff. I admired him as a rapper. I thought he was smart. I thought he was engaging. I thought he had something to say that was important to my generation. And now, 25 years after he first said what he first said, he still does
Still saying it.
to my generation. Yeah. And he's still saying, and now the message has changed. It's grown. It's matured, but I've matured with it. That, to me, is fascinating, because he was able to do. He had no intention 25 years ago that he'd still be speaking to a group of people in 25 years about whatever it is this group of people cares about 25 years later.
Right.
That is the fascinating thing. And I point him out just because we dropped him today. And because of course I really like him and all that stuff. But all of our guests had some sort of serendipitous timing on their mission where suddenly it became a life.
Yeah. But I mean, and everybody has those moments. It's like what they do with them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's having the courage sometimes to follow what you're doing, and I mean, nobody struggled as much as Big Betancourt. I mean,
Jesus.
he went as far in every bad direction as you can, you know, and yet came
There's
out on top.
no reason he shouldn't be dead or in prison.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, divorced, dead, prison, any of those things.
And he's none of those.
And that's kind of, what's the word, endemic in the music business almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you've interviewed
he's
quite a few folks that have had pretty rough times.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But those, when you look in retrospect, it's just part of the path.
Yep.
And they've got to deal with whatever their muse is that drives them to do what it is. Sometimes the muse and them have to fight, and sometimes that fight is with drugs.
And you guys said it earlier, but I think it comes out clearly in each one of your interviews. Success takes work. Every
Yeah.
one of these folks that you talk to,
Yep.
they're describing an awful lot of work, dedication, effort that they're put into it. And what's amazing,
Blind faith sometimes.
yeah, and I see, especially in Drez today, and I've heard it in many other interviews you guys have done. There's a humility in there,
Yeah.
in these people that's really admirable too.
Well, they also see the people that haven't made it with them, that came with them along the way, and they understand how close they came to not making it. For example, I'm sure Drez has a bunch of peers that were right there with him.
Yeah,
but just,
probably a dozen.
But to hear
Yeah.
a guy say, I'm on a plane, dozens, if not hundreds of times
Right.
a year. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I'm here for a reason. There's a positive message to share. And you know what? I might not be making $1 million a year, but I'm going to share it. I mean, that's pretty neat to hear.
and what he doesn't say is that I'm not working hard. He says, I'm fortunate to do something I love. And I absolutely know that it could be much worse.
Yeah.
And that, that's what makes Drez so incredible.
And we could say this: Drez is just lucky to get this press because his episodes today, and we
Right.
like him as much as we
It's a
do.
common theme, yeah.
But it is a common theme. He's saying the things that people say, and you should, everybody, if you're listening, go follow Drez on. He's Black Sheep Drez at
Yeah.
Black Sheep Drez on Twitter. Go follow him. He's fucking busy. That dude works his ass off.
Yeah. And you could say that. So, for example, about Jim DeFelice, that guy will sit at his computer for 14 hours a day, still
Works
take
his
the trash
ass
off.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
You can go down the line 1 through 40.
Every one of them, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, to be honest, John said it's easy doing what we do, but we work at this. We
It is a
have,
fucking lot of work.
yeah. We've built our lives. We didn't intend to end up here,
Yeah.
but we built our lives. I mean, I've interviewed thousands of people. John is a storyteller from his cultural birth all the way through. He has to do this, but he does it well. There's people that have podcasts that we think, gosh, they're just not that great at it, but that's their road. Our road has been very rough. We've had to get to this point. We've had to learn lessons. We've had to learn humility, all these things. So there's a lot of practice.
Yeah.
That's true.
So what are the bloopers? What's on the bloopers reel for the Break It Down show?
A lot of stammering, really.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
about it. I wish it was funnier than that, but there's a lot of stammering.
The stuff, it isn't a blooper reel that you'd want, and I wish we had the ability to give it to you guys, but it's the stuff that happens off the show. It's incredible. We'll go sit in the deck. Back when we had the radio show, the breaks when the music was on, such great stuff that comes out, and you're just like, man, I wish we just had the mics rolling and the tape going.
That's one of the reasons why we like this medium, the podcast, because the mic is rolling all the time. We'd sit a guest down across from us, and we roll, we roll the record. We roll tape. I almost said, but yeah, figuratively speaking, we roll tape, and then it just goes. And Pete's right. I would say, all right, and do the station ID, and then drop a song, and in the middle of that song is when some marvelous comment about something absolutely fascinating would come out, and then, hey, we're back, and we're talking with George Whitney, and then George Whitney decides to go off in another direction. It's like, man, we didn't capture that moment, and that moment was brilliant. But now we're in a format where we're just rolling, and we get to capture all the moments.
There are things, though, that happen off of the recording, like when we're done, and that you got to realize the person, we come down and the person comes down, but oftentimes they seem to open up even more now that the mics are off, and they'll give us a lot more of their soul, and it's beautiful stuff, just beautiful, and you just
Drez.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, he came over here, we rolled tape, we had a great conversation that we captured, and it there was full of gems. And then we said, thank you, man. Thank you for being on the show. And we hit the stop button. And then we refilled our drinks and sat on the deck for another hour and a half.
Yeah. That happens as often as it doesn't happen, easily.
Yeah.
Ellis Rodriguez, same thing.
And I think there's few better places to do that than right here. This view is
It's so
gorgeous.
nice here.
Yeah.
All right, so what's the future look like? What topics? I mean, I don't want to ask
Well,
you guys.
I want to put Pete on the spot for
Oh,
a second,
okay.
and I'll
You're
do
in.
it in return. Pete, I'd like you to pick 2 favorite shows.
Oh, my goodness. All I can do is pick the first 2 that come to mind. I love the Johnny Walker episode.
Yeah.
Partly because we had him first,
Yep.
and then everybody had a crack at him, and no one got him as good as we did.
Yep.
And there's a backstory to that, but I don't want to jump in front of John.
Right. No, sure. I mean, I know him, but I also know, and one of the reasons why we did this show, one of the many reasons, but one of them was that we didn't want to ask the same 5 questions that everybody else asked.
Yeah.
We knew there were such great stories out there. So I absolutely love that. It's not a show that you will see anywhere else. You won't see that show anywhere else. So
Anywhere.
Take the time, go back in time, listen to that Johnny Walker episode, and tell me that show isn't incredible.
And you almost got to read the book to get the story, because I'm not sure his whole story, or even a good summary of it comes out in that specific conversation that you
Right.
had. Johnny's a guy who was a native Iraqi,
Right.
who helped the SEAL teams and the U.S. military when we went into Iraq, and worked, by all accounts, an extraordinary amount of time and effort put in to
Been
really
on more
save a lot of
SEAL
time.
missions than any of the SEALs.
Yeah.
And their words, not mine.
Yeah, that's them.
And
they
so-
all say it. He's been on more SEAL missions than any of us because he's been on all of our missions.
Yeah, and all of them, all the ones that I've heard publicly say, he's one of us.
Yeah.
And Pete goes back with him. You helped him.
I'm in the book.
Pete's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, but I think you're the only person.
He feels
that's-
great about it.
You're the
That's
only
what we
person
like
that's
about Pete.
You're the only person that's shared a story about soiling yourself.
And laughs about it all the time. It's a funny story.
It's hilarious.
That's humility.
Yeah. It is. And
Okay.
I honestly, the second show that came to mind was the Tommy McElroy show. It's just a great reveal into someone you never get to hear about the producers. And this guy, and the work he put in to get to where he was, to be in that moment in time, and all of the knowledge that he has. And it was incredible to me. It's just a story. I should never have been in that room. I should never have heard all these great things. And I barely did anything in this show because he did all the work. But it's just an incredible show. And I'm so proud that we were able to tell that story. And that's not to exclude any of the other 38 shows, but those are the first two that came to mind.
Yeah. And John, if you had to pick 2 episodes, what 2 episodes stand out most in your memory?
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing that Pete did. It's really just about the first 2 that jump out at you, because man, I really have enjoyed every single one. I could say that and not mean it and be pretty convincing. Watch this, Linda. See if you're convinced. I have loved every episode of our show equally. That's not true. I haven't loved every episode equally, but every episode of our show has been at least a 7 in my mind. And a lot of times when we didn't get a 10, when we got a 7, it was just a matter of circumstance, We went there on the wrong day and it was kind of rainy or whatever the deal was.
The barbecue was really good in downtown Oakland. And
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Everybody's a little lethargic.
I remember
it was.
Pete came into that interview. He was these guys were loving this they must have had a half rack of ribs, right?
Yep.
Loving it so much. Pete must have touched his ear. He had barbecue sauce on his ear during the whole interview.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
That barbecue was good and remains good.
So what are your 2 shows?
Wow. Well, I'm going to come at it from a different angle. I'll say also Tommy, because the reason that I say Tommy is for all the reasons that you said it. I loved it for those reasons too. But goddamn, I pestered that fucking guy for months and months, and he was always kind, just not always open to it. But what I knew about that was, it's not that I'm the kind of person who will wear anybody down, but I knew I had to wear him down because I knew his story was going to be good. And I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear it for me. And I promised him, I cashed in every favor from everybody else. Hey, Dwayne, can I tell Tommy that we want to do his interview at your studio? Will you get behind me on that? Because I really want to get Tommy. Hey, James, will you tell Tommy that?
Right.
I mean, every single thing that we could do to get anybody to tell Tommy that it was cool to talk with us, we did. And I would ping him all the time and just say, Tommy, I promise you, an hour is all I'm going to take of your life. And you'll be glad you did it, and I'll be completely respectful, and I'm a big fan of you and all that stuff. And finally, he acquiesced, and we showed up at his place, and we didn't leave until nearly 3 hours later.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
And he didn't. Oftentimes, our spell that we cast is so powerful. They're like, "Wait, that's it? That was an hour? That was 90 minutes." They're like, "What?"
I've seen
we
this.
kept telling him, "Hey, Tommy, we got 10 more minutes." Oh, it's okay, man. It's okay. We can keep going.
I've seen this in action, where folks sit down, they're looking around the room, they're wondering, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into?
Right.
The first 2-3 minutes is kind of a little, awkward, like any start of a conversation is. And invariably, at the end, they're like, oh yeah, we can continue. Yeah, I got time. We'll make time for this. Let's keep talking. It's a testament, I think, to the great job that you guys do.
Thanks. Yeah, we appreciate it. I mean, that does matter to us. And I'm able to, when I talk to the guests that we try to get, I'm able to say that everybody who comes on the show enjoys it. And they become our friends, because we're not just looking for 5 minutes of their time to maybe sell some books. We really care about them. We spend time reading the book if at all possible. Even though we won't talk about the book. I don't know that we've talked about many of the books when we've had authors on.
Yeah.
We had General Bolger on. I think we barely talked about his book, but we talked about important things that impacted his book, though.
And that's what we try to do, because he's going to go on CNN and talk about his book.
Yeah.
He's going to go on MSNBC and talk about his book.
Yeah, and that's what you want to do is get him off the script.
Yeah, we'd like to have him talk about the things that he finds important other than his book.
Yeah.
The other episode that I really, really enjoyed and still enjoy the memory of was Mick Betancourt.
Oh boy, yeah.
That was a story.
Yeah.
Like a series of stories.
That was a lot of fun.
We laughed and laughed. Yeah, that was a good show. I mean, there's so many good ones. Easily could take us right back to our first episode. But
Oh, man, I was thinking about that, too.
Yeah.
James is... and he's been such a great ally for us because he really pushed us out of the nest from
Yeah.
our radio show. And not to say that he wanted us not to be on the radio anymore, but he really encouraged us to spread our wings because what we needed to do was an interview show.
You know, and to kind of combine Mick and James into one thought, Mick always talks about your self-doubt and your inner voice that's wrong about what you're doing. And it's easy for John and I to say, this isn't any good. But James wouldn't have it. He said, what you guys are doing is good. You need to keep doing it.
Yeah, he wouldn't have it. He
Yeah.
wouldn't have it.
And that guy knows good. He knows he's made good. He's like, keep doing this. Don't you quit. This is great. I'm going to
His
help.
productions have sold 30 million records.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's
He's
good
done
advice.
okay.
Yeah,
But
he built the biggest act in the world, for a time,
yeah.
and it's incredible.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's
How about you, George?
What are my two
your
favorite-
Yeah,
Gosh.
that's a good question.
I was there when you guys recorded the podcast with Dr. Greenberg.
Yeah.
He's a really neat guy.
He is.
I remember sitting there, it was my first time I'd been out with you guys, and I remember thinking, man, I don't want to drop something, make a noise, make a face, ruin the interview. I don't know. I was a little nervous, and I was expecting to hear this guy from Princeton talk about all that technical music stuff
Yeah.
that Pete knows because your dad was a music teacher, right? And he just opened up and told these great stories, and within a matter of 5 minutes, he's one of the guys sitting around talking about some stuff that everybody can relate to.
And he's fucking brilliant.
He is.
But he's even funnier than he is smart.
Yeah, he's a great entertainer.
His smarts got him into Princeton, but he's funnier than he is smart.
But I think one of the impressions I have from remembering him talk, was that, he put care into the way he expressed his sentences, like a composer sits down and writes music.
Sure.
And
That's true.
he really crafted what he said, and it's a joy. I've gone back and listened to it. It's a joy to listen to. And
We
I hope
did
you guys
practically
Oh, man,
no
that's great.
editing on that show.
Yeah, really.
I hope that you guys are able to. He invited you back for martinis, right? I think you guys should go back and.
Yeah, we just got to book it.
Dr. Bob,
Yeah,
we're
let's
coming.
do it.
All right, guys, we'll go get them.
thank you, George.
Thanks, George.